In March of 1918, as the First World War raged across the oceans, a massive U.S. Navy collier slipped into the deep Atlantic and vanished without a single distress call, leaving behind one of the greatest maritime mysteries in American history: the disappearance of the USS Cyclops and her 309-member crew. The ship had been sailing from the island of Barbados toward Baltimore, carrying thousands of tons of raw manganese ore, a crucial wartime material used to harden steel for the U.S. military. Commanded by Lieutenant Commander George Worley, a controversial officer known for his abrasive leadership style, the Cyclops was considered a workhorse of the Navy's fuel fleet, a vessel so large and sturdy that many believed her practically unsinkable. But as she departed Barbados on March 4, 1918, something changed. Witnesses reported the ship riding unusually low in the water, burdened by a cargo load heavier than she had ever carried before. Some sailors on the island later recalled that the crew seemed tense, whispering about strange arguments on board and conflicts involving the captain. Still, the ship left port on schedule, heading northwest into waters later associated with the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. Only days into her voyage, wireless stations along the East Coast waited for routine messages, weather updates, navigational confirmations, or at the very least a check-in signal. But the Cyclops sent nothing. No warning. No call for help. No trace of danger. When she failed to arrive in Baltimore on March 13, the Navy began to worry. Soon, worry turned to alarm. Warships were dispatched, searches began, and coastal stations combed the air for any signal. But the ocean remained silent. As investigators retraced the ship's route, details emerged that deepened the mystery. The Cyclops had made 2 unscheduled stops in Brazil before reaching Barbados, allegedly because of engine trouble. Some sailors claimed the starboard engine was malfunctioning, forcing the ship to run at reduced power. Others insisted the engines were fine, and that the captain himself had ordered the delays for reasons he never explained. In the port of Bahia, crew members reportedly confided to local officials that morale had collapsed under Worley's command. Several sailors said he berated them constantly, calling them vulgar names and showing favoritism to certain German-born crewmen at a time when the U.S. was deeply suspicious of German activity. Rumors spread that Worley had enemies on board, that sailors feared him, and that tensions had reached a breaking point. When the Cyclops docked in Rio de Janeiro, the U.S. consul even recommended removing several crewmen, stating that they were creating a dangerous and explosive atmosphere. But the Navy declined, and the ship sailed on. As the Cyclops left Barbados, reports indicate she was severely overloaded with manganese ore, more than her safe capacity. Some maritime experts later suggested that the excessive weight might have compromised the ship's structural integrity, making her vulnerable to sudden failure in heavy seas. But the weather records from that week told a different story. Calm waters, light winds, and no evidence of storms along her route. The disappearance seemed too sudden, too complete, too clean for a simple mechanical failure. Then another strange detail surfaced. Witnesses in Barbados claimed they saw several crewmen arguing on deck before departure. Others said Worley had insisted the ship avoid sending wireless messages during the voyage, a highly unusual decision for a naval vessel in wartime. Some believed he feared German U-boats in the Caribbean, though there was no confirmed submarine activity in the region at the time. Still, the silence became one of the most troubling clues. If the ship had sunk in bad weather or suffered an explosion, someone, the captain, an officer, anyone, should have signaled distress. But no SOS ever came. As days turned into weeks, theories multiplied. Many suspected a catastrophic structural failure. Others believed a sudden cargo shift had caused the ship to roll and capsize instantly. Some thought she struck an uncharted reef or shoal. But none of these explanations accounted for the absolute lack of wreckage. No debris. No oil slick. No bodies. Nothing. The ocean had swallowed the Cyclops whole. As the investigation expanded, the Navy examined the ship's design. The Cyclops was nearly 550 feet long, one of the largest colliers of her time, but she had a single massive engine and no internal longitudinal bulkheads to reinforce her hull. Some naval architects later argued that such a configuration could create a structural weak point when the ship was heavily loaded. The manganese ore, a dense and shifting material, might have moved under pressure and stressed the hull to the point of catastrophic failure. Yet even this scenario failed to explain the scale of the disappearance. Typically, even when ships broke apart, some portion of the wreck would remain afloat long enough to be discovered. But the Cyclops left no trace at all. Then the rumors of sabotage began. Lieutenant Commander Worley was born in Germany and had once served on German merchant ships before immigrating to the United States. In 1918, during the height of anti-German fear, this made him a target of suspicion. Some newspapers suggested, without evidence, that the Cyclops had been hijacked by German sympathizers or handed over to the enemy. But wartime intelligence files contained nothing to support the theory. German U-boat logs from 1918 were later declassified, and none recorded sinking a ship resembling the Cyclops. Still, the shadows of suspicion lingered. In the 1920s, former sailors claimed the ship might have been infiltrated by saboteurs, that certain crew members behaved strangely in the days before departure, and that Worley's distrust of his own men may have contributed to the ship's downfall. But without proof, these accounts faded into folklore. When two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the USS Proteus and USS Nereus, disappeared under similar circumstances during World War II, the mystery deepened. All three were massive colliers, all three were heavily loaded with ore, and all three vanished without debris in nearly the same region of the ocean. Some naval historians pointed to this pattern as evidence of a design flaw. Others believed the Atlantic itself was to blame. As decades passed, the disappearance of the Cyclops became entwined with the mythology of the Bermuda Triangle, a region long associated with unexplained vanishings. The ship's last known position placed her near the southern edge of the area later defined by that legend. But official Navy records maintain that the ship's true route did not take her into the Triangle's most infamous zone, and no scientific evidence has ever linked the region to supernatural activity. Even so, the allure of the unexplained kept the theory alive. Families of the lost crew pleaded for answers. Widows wrote letters to the Navy for years, asking for any update, any clue, any sign. But the official response never changed. The ship was lost, the cause unknown. In 1920, the Navy issued a final summary. USS Cyclops has disappeared. All search efforts have failed. The cause can only be conjectured. For many, that word, conjectured, signaled the beginning of a mystery that would stretch on for more than a century. Over time, new theories emerged. Some researchers suggested the ship might have been pulled into a deep-sea trench and sunk to depths unreachable by modern technology. Others pointed to the manganese